Velkommen til Stammeklubben. En podcast, hvor vi udforsker den 1% af verdens befolkning, der stammer. Dine værter er Christian Jørgensen og Alexander Ravnsholdt. Og i den her episode, der har du været på tur, Christian?
Det har jeg. Jeg må tage en forholdet. Jeg må tage den alene. Fordi du ikke kunne, Alexander,
ja,
desværre.
Jeg var desværre forhindret. Det var ellers et interview, jeg også rigtig gerne ville være med til. Fordi at du har talt med selveste Dave McGuire.
Præcis. Stifteren af The McGuire Programme, som jo er det her stammeprogram, vi begge to har været på for snart mange år siden, og som vi egentlig synes har hjulpet os en hel del.
Ja, det er simpelthen ham, der har fundet på den her teknik, eller i hvert fald den sammensætning af det. Der er mange af delkomponenterne, der også findes mange andre steder, der også bliver brugt i det offentlige i dag blandt andet, men som han så har samlet til det her unikke program, som man kan komme på kurser i.
Og vi skylder også lytterne at sige, at det her, det er jo en kæmpe special, fordi det er jo på engelsk.
Det er rigtigt.
Så det håber vi, at lytterne de er med på. Vi har ikke mulighed for at oversætte, desværre. Nej. Det ved jeg sgu ikke lige, hvordan det skulle fungere. Så det er på engelsk, og det håber vi, at man er med på. Men vi har jo faktisk mødtes med Dave begge to før.
Ja, vi var på et roadtrip, simpelthen for, hvor lang tid siden er det? Det må næsten være knap 10 år siden, 9 år siden.
Ja.
Noget der omkring i hvert fald.
14-15 stykker.
Hvor vi var i Californien og sige hej til Dave blandt andet. Vi lavede også andre ting. Men,
præcis. Han bor i et, nok amerikanske standarder, meget, meget simpelt hus. Jeg synes ikke, det var noget helt vildt. Altså, stille og roligt i Santa Barbara.
Yes.
Dejligt område. Vi fik at vide, at Oprah Winfrey havde et hus i området, som jo var et helt andet hus til langt flere penge end hans og alt muligt. Ja. Så, men jeg husker stadigvæk, at jeg var ude i Daves have og plukke en limefrugt, og det var helt ekstremt, synes jeg. Det her med, at man kunne plukke en lime simpelthen ude i en have. Det var, der skal ikke så meget til at imponere mig, men det var altså noget helt særligt.
Det var en god tur. Ja, og jeg må om, jeg har faktisk ikke hørt interviewet endnu. Hvad fik I vendt undervejs?
Jamen, og som du siger, det var egentlig nok mere et interview, det her, en decideret podcast-samtale, som vi egentlig kører lidt. Det er jo lidt temaet, at det er en samtale, men som du er inde på, det var nok mere et interview, hvor vi i fællesskab, Alexander og os to, havde forberedt nogle spørgsmål, som jeg fik en god snak med Dave om. Og hvad var det? Jamen, det var jo alt fra, hvor fandt han teknikken? Altså, hvad blev den sammensat af? Hvad er det, der har gjort, at det er, som det er på den måde? Hvorfor gør man, som man gør? Og så videre. Det kommer han alt sammen ind på her.
Spændende. Det glæder mig til at høre.
Så det bliver interessant. Og jeg har jo taget hele vejen til Malmø for at lave interviewet, fordi der var et McGuire-kursus i Malmø, som vi jo så ikke var på den her gang, men som vi har været på før. Og det var så i forbindelse med det, at jeg lige kunne låne Dave i nogle timer.
Ja, men smadret godt. Jeg glæder mig til at høre det.
Jeg glæder mig også til at genhøre det, så det håber vi også, at I gør.
Ja, og vi vil også gerne takke den episode sponsor, som der er McGuire Programmet, som der er for alle personer over 14 år, som ønsker at arbejde med deres stamme og gerne vil blive veltalende. Hvis det lyder som noget for dig, så gå ind på McGuireprogramme.dk og læs mere.
Og med det sagt, lad os starte episoden. Welcome, Dave, to Stammeklubben.
Thanks for having me.
Would you start by presenting yourself?
Well, by present myself, you mean my name, Dave McGuire. I'm the founder of the McGuire Programme.
What is your first memory of stuttering?
First memory of stuttering that goes back to age 3 or something like that. We had no kindergarten or preschool in the little town where I lived, Gardnerville, Nevada. So I was starting the first grade at 6, and I can't remember really stuttering, but it was obviously I was doing it because it was brought to the attention of my parents. And then both my parents had to work when I was 3 years old, so I had to go to a daycare. And the lady who ran it she was quite abusive, and I didn't want to go there. And I think that's where it started. I was terrified going there, and I recall Mom telling me that one day she approached my parents and said, "Your son is a stutterer." And that really hit home with them. And I don't know if I really saw it as a problem until junior high school. But that's when I was started to get teased. We moved from that nice little town to a place called Victorville, California, Victor Valley Junior High School. And yeah, that's where the bullying started. I had to become a fighter. And then into high school, it got pretty severe.
Did you have family who was stutterers as well?
No, nobody. I was the only child.
Ah, okay. And no like uncles or anything?
No uncles, no grandparents.
Okay. That
we knew of anyway, stuttered.
How has stuttering affected your life?
Well, since I've been able to speak and speak well, I've looked back on my life, and more and more I'm seeing the damage that it did to me. You have a thing called Erickson's 8 Ages of Man. These stages you go through to mature and become a mature human being. And how do we go through these stages? Well, we go through it by relating to other people, other kids, other adults. How do we do that? We do it through the spoken word. Now, my stutter was really severe. And so I missed out on, there's so much that you miss out on not being able to communicate verbally. It's like it becomes more and more painfully obvious that what you say and how you say it is your personality. That's first impression you make on people. That's your connection to the human race. And when you can't do it, you're kind of cutting yourself off. So I never really felt part of the human race. Now, that may not sound like much, but it is. It is. And it caused me, I never really learned how to interact, how to behave. I would watch a lot of television, and I would try to emulate what they do, but no.
So what do you mean behave? In which situations?
Well, how to interact with other people, and just it's hard to describe the damage that it does. But maybe one good thing, but is that I felt I had to prove myself. And so I became very good at music. I played trombone, tuba. I became pretty good at sports, American football and tennis. And plus, just trying to compensate for this inability to do what 98% of the world's population does so easy without even thinking. And what little 3 and 4 year old kids can do so easily. It does something to you, and it's hard to see it until you found a solution for it. But you realize, and I warn people too, that just because you come into the McGuire program and you can speak well and you learn to speak very well, you're not a giant in chains. You have some damage to be repaired in your, I guess you call it your psychosocial self. And and that's important you do that too.
Did you get any help with a speech therapist in school?
When I was a senior in high school, and here I was trying to be a normal teenager. And so on the football team, I was in the band, doing all these things to be seen as being normal, a normal fluent speaker. But it was obvious my stutter was real severe. And the powers that be, I guess the principal and the counselor said, hey, we got to do something about this. So they called in this rather nice lady, speech therapist, and I was pulled out of class like a couple of times a week to go sit with her and do these things on a metronome and other things. And I would be humiliated because everybody knew where I was going. It was just, blatant, you're not normal. You need help. There's something wrong with you. And it didn't help. It just made it worse. That was about it. In my early years, my parents took me, I remember, to San Francisco. There was for speech therapy there. And that didn't do anything.
And what kind of techniques did they learn you?
I can't remember. I think I remember this Catholic priest. Went to a Catholic church for a few times, but he says, he gave me a set of keys and said, you just shake these while you talk, boy, and you'll be fine, or something like that, or slap your leg or do something.
So trying to...
Tricks, right? They're called tricks. Yeah. And then I remember going to a hypnotist. My parents took me to a hypnotist. Cost a lot of money in Beverly Hills. And
that didn't work.
Well, it worked for a few days. I guess Sheehan talked about role playing. You play the role of a stutterer or a fluent speaker, but I played the role of somebody who had been to therapy and could all of a sudden talk. And so I was blabbing away to my grandma and my parents, and afterwards I wasn't under hypnosis. I was pretending to be under hypnosis because I wanted to please everybody. And then I played the role of a fluent speaker, and that worked for 2 or 3 days. And I remember Grandma saying, how wonderful, and Mom said, yes, thank you, God. And then after about 2 or 3 days, the act wore off, and boy, here it came back, just roaring back, and then I could barely get a word out.
But it's funny you mentioned this with an act. Don't you think it's the same?
Role playing.
Yeah, role playing.
Yeah, it's like actors. You got some actors like James Earl Jones and Bruce Willis and Marilyn Monroe and some others who when they act, they don't stutter. It's when they're being themselves is when they stutter. So I was a marvelous actor. I remember going through a period where I was pretending I was this washed-up tennis player from Romania, talking in a Romanian accent, and I tell you, it worked. It worked for a while, and then until, hey, I don't think he's from Romania.
Maybe you should change the accent then to some other country, Spain.
But all these things. But I developed this bag of tricks. I changed my name 4 times.
Changed it like a real, or changed it?
No, well, just in my introductions and stuff, I couldn't say Dave anymore, Dave. So I changed to my middle name, Ted, and then to Ed, and then something else. Okay. Anyways, all in an effort to what? To lie that I was a normal fluent speaker. And the word is lie, yeah. Yeah, we're lying. So,
yeah. For those unfamiliar, you founded the McGuire Programme in 1994?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. Can you briefly describe what the McGuire Programme is?
Briefly describe. Well, I devised a method, I guess you call it. I'd been through, when I was at UCLA, the great Dr. Sheehan. Anybody who knows anything about stuttering knows that name. He passed away years ago, but he had a great little program, which basically taught non-avoidance, voluntary stuttering. He was a psychologist, and through him, I was able to understand the psychology of stuttering and what I could do about it. A lot of voluntary stuttering. But that was it. That was basically it. And it worked for a while, but gosh, it required so much work. Just accept, you get fluency through the back door if you do it intense enough. And I didn't have the discipline or the character to. I was a bit arrogant, a little bit into denial and complacency, intellectualization and externalization. But then went to Holland. I ended up getting married there and raising a family.
What inspired you to create the McGuire Programme and its techniques?
Well, like I was talking about, I tried all this other. It was Sheehan who had influenced me the most. I had dropped out of college. I was majoring in agriculture, so I wouldn't have to talk to anybody, I thought. But didn't do very well.
So you would be a farmer?
Yeah, I'd be a farmer or something like that. But the fact of it is, I didn't think I had much hope for any kind of a life, seriously, because I started not just everything. One of the hallmarks of stuttering is hopelessness. So then I found myself, he inspired me to go back to college, majoring in psychology. And I ended up getting a degree in psychology from UCLA. Went on to work in the field in Napa State Hospital, started my own adolescent treatment program. I found I had a talent. I guess that's from being an outsider of the human race. I was able to see things. And I had a special talent for combining concepts and turning these into a reality. So in the adolescent treatment program at Napa State Hospital, I developed a sports program mainly around tennis and getting these kids using sports and tennis as a therapeutic modality, I guess you would call it. And to get them to change how they see themselves and to develop those things that you need. It's a microcosm of life, those habits and values that you need to be successful in life. And then I ended up starting my own program. It was called Rite of Passage, and adolescent treatment program that was very successful.
And was that a stammering program?
No. It was for emotionally disturbed teenagers.
Oh.
And I did that with a very severe stutter. But I guess that the whole thing with Dr. Sheehan, he taught non-avoidance. I mean, just do it. Just if you want to say something, it doesn't matter how long it takes to say it, just do it. So I was able to make some pretty significant accomplishments for a stutter, and including an adolescent treatment program, which is still going. It's still very successful. And but it involved politics and stuff, and a board of directors and a director of operations who knew how to manipulate things, and I ended up out, lost everything, but ended up coming to Europe to play clay court tennis and see an old girlfriend, and ended up in Holland. And then there was this program by this old opera singer there teaching what I discovered to be costal diaphragmatic breathing that opera singers use to get the voices they have. Apply that to speaking, and wow. It was, turns out that the guy who did this, his name's Len Del Ferro, and Dr. Sheehan were professional enemies. They didn't agree with each other at all. So Del Ferro didn't agree with Sheehan's concept of voluntary stuttering. Sheehan didn't agree with anything having to do with physical breathing, anything physical. He was all psychological. So I ended up the causal breathing. It worked for a while. Then after about a week or so, bang, here it comes again. That old fear, and then the old bad physical habits where you freeze up and then you start struggling, distorting, and then even using tricks and avoidance. So it was back, but I realized what was going on psychologically, that, the old fear had come back. The fear of stuttering had come back. So what was the answer to that? Well, a lot of voluntary stuttering, but it was combining the breathing, the causal breathing, and then I incorporated some other things, and some from sports psychology, and having lost, what I thought was a cure. I was told I was cured. Well, I wasn't cured, but to get it back, I thought I was really onto something. So I started the McGuire Program. Having started the adolescent treatment program, Rite of Passage, I figured I could do this, and I did. So the British Stuttering Association sent me this medical student who was so severe she had to drop out of medical school. And I worked with her for 10 days. After the first day, she had made huge progress, and she did very well. She was able to go back to medical school, and she's now Dr. Nita Bloggy. And she did a bunch of articles in the UK. And pretty soon I was getting a lot of calls, and they would come to my house in Hoofddorp in Holland, and I turned the attic into a little conference room. And then we ran things there. And then after a while, I was getting calls saying, "Hey, Dave, I got a bunch of people over here who want to try this out. So why don't we get some of the members together, and they'll get a refresher and they'll help out." So yeah, we did that, and pretty soon I was flying, rather than them coming to Holland, I was going there, and then to England. Then someone came in the program from Ireland. I got a call from them saying, "Hey, we have a bunch of people here who want to try this." And then Norway, and then Australia, New Zealand, then, well, right now it's all over the world. That's how it spread. And what had become very plain, I thought I had devised probably the best combination of physical and mental techniques. But what I discovered is that because you get this sense of isolation when you're a kid, that turns the fear into panic, and these things we do, freezing, struggling, distortion, tricks and avoidance, or panic reactions. And a lot of that is just feeling you're the only one on the planet with this problem. So I devised this where, this whole program is run by those of us who have been through stuttering, and we know what to do about it. And so started training coaches and instructors to instruct courses, because I was seemed to be living in airports, and it was getting too much for me. I was getting burned out. And then, staff trainers, regional directors. And what we have is something that I doubt if the speech therapy profession could ever match, is just this unlimited support system. And you need that. You need to be able to call somebody. You need a personal coach right there every day, because that fear can be overwhelming.
Just a little side note. How many people do you think you have helped today?
Since 94?
Yes.
I guess, it's probably approaching 10,000. Somewhere's in there. You figure 400 a year, about average, sometimes. COVID really affected, our numbers went way down, but so figure 10,000 over these 30 years. We're going to be 30 years old next year.
Okay, so you were talking a little bit about the techniques before. Can you describe how the basic technique of the McGuire program works?
Yeah, it's not just one basic technique. It's remember that stuttering is a combination of some bad habits, mental, physical, and emotional. So we have to address. Well, the emotional will take care of itself once you clean up the mental and the physical. But basic is the breathing, which I learned from the opera singer, and learn a lot of things from other people. It's just any new invention is actually a combination of stuff that's already been invented. So this is no different. But there are a few things that I invented myself, like using a belt to know that you're expanding your ribs, therefore using the costal part of the diaphragm. But physical stuttering, it's just common sense. You could have read up on it, but it's just common sense. Anything I say, you can observe in yourself. That physical stuttering would start from the freezing of the diaphragm. Well, what's going on? Well, why is it freezing? It's because it's contracting when it needs to relax, and then relax to what? To release. There's two chambers of the thorax that operate on the vacuum principle. You have to release the vacuum to release the air over your articulators and your vocal cords to create sounds. It just sounds, the articulation, vocalization of sounds, and to and turn those sounds into words into sentences that you use to communicate thoughts and feelings with, which makes us something uniquely human to communicate through language. So yeah, the breathing is very critical on this, very critical, and thanks to the opera singer, we now understand that. And then, but you also have what's called, distortion and struggle of the articulators and vocal cords. Well, then I took what Sheehan would call the slide. I thought, hey, there's something else going on here. And I refined it. I refined that to also, I guess, what Van Riper would call a block modifier. But I don't like to use those terms. It's just, what is stuttering? I've been looking at this for 30 years, and stuttering is just obviously immediate effect is a failure to articulate and to vocalize certain sounds of certain words. That's all. But cause is quite complicated, and the result is quite complicated because it's emotions.
Maybe you can give us a snapshot of how a typical McGuire course looks like. Maybe there is people here on the podcast listening. They have never heard of the McGuire program before and have no idea what a course is like.
No, well, it's generally there are 3 days, some are 4 days. It's usually in a hotel conference room, and it's designed to be an impact. To have an impact on it, to create a radical change in a short amount of time. It does require hard work over long hours, 3 days of very long hours. And if you walked into a room, you would generally see a line or lines of people facing each other and then there's an instructor who's teaching these things, all these concepts and these techniques. And then you practice them with each other. And then you go on to the next one. And that's how you do it. You do that for 3 hours a day. On the first day, you're going to be dealing with the physical. You're going to learn to costal breathe from the costal diaphragm. That's something. It's not natural to do this and apply it to speaking. And then there's a thing called, we talked about the struggle and distortion of the articulators. That's just simply layman's terms. Lips, tongue, and teeth are your main ones. You know, I'm sure a linguist or elocution expert or speech therapist has other definitions, but yeah, basically lips, tongue, teeth. And then you got your vocal cords. And you got all these sounds. Stuttering is failure to articulate and or vocalize sounds. Well, let's learn what these sounds are, and let's start to exaggerate. So I developed what's called the hit and hold, where you just hit that sound that you couldn't really articulate, vocalize before, and you hold it out. And you hold it out with the idea you're exaggerating that which you are afraid of. And that you would use tricks to deal with, and you would find ways to switch those words or get out of a situation in order not to have to what? Articulate and vocalize those sounds. So, and then there's a commonly used thing called a block release, which I borrowed from, Van Riper, and which is very handy. You just release. And these other techniques, you got to assertive for sound. You want to hit that sound. See, stuttering is all about holding back when you're speaking. And perfect timing, you breathe and you inhale and you speak immediately, stuff like that.
You spoke about what you did at day 1. What about at day 2 at the chorus and day 3?
Yeah, right. Well, thank you. Yeah, then I'm describing day 1, the physical. You're going to learn the costal breathing. Going to learn the hit and hold, block release. Going to know how to articulate and vocalize all these sounds, exaggerating that. And then you're going to, later on, you just start going down what we call the checklist. And then on the second day, that's psychological day. And that's getting into, what's, mental pattern, mental and emotional. And it starts with, what's a bad mental habit that we all have, we all come in the program with, is trying to hide your stutter, you're trying to hide it. And in a big way, if you really peel back the layers of that onion, you're trying to lie that you're a normal fluent speaker. And a good covert stutterer is very skilled at using tricks and avoiding. They're getting away with the lie. And overt stutterers trying to lie, we're just not doing. And I was very overt, just trying to lie, just not doing a good job of it. So,
okay, and then day 3, what do you do at the chorus?
And the day 3, the psychological also, there's some other things I have to say about that. There's the thing that recently, past 5 years or something like that, became very aware of that. And I experienced it myself. You feel like your confidence is 100%. Your fear is 0%. You're having fun speaking. You're doing it well, and it's easy in all these situations. And you're often flying and just having a great old time. Then suddenly something triggers this fear. You don't understand where it comes from. Well, and then you're confused because you don't understand. And then the formula of fear plus confusion equals panic. And what happens when you panic? Well, Diaphragm freezes, articulators, vocal cords struggle and distort. And then here comes the old tricks and avoidance. All these are something you do, behavior, therefore physical. So to really have them understand, it's important to understand the nature of the phobia. Where does it come from? Well, it comes from punishment-based learning, especially when you're a kid. You're basically punished every time you stutter in some way by people disrespecting you, mocking you overtly. You know, when you stutter, that's punishment for a kid. That's punishment for an adult. And it's fear-based. It creates the fear. You're afraid to do it. And that's what, and hey, and then we learn to punish ourselves. It's punishment-based, fear-based learning, which yet we were punished every time we stuttered by people disrespecting us, rejecting us, and that's a huge one. And then we learn to punish ourselves. Now think about it. This is going on several times a day, this fear-based, punishment-based learning around the speaking process. And the more it happens, the more that fear increases. Well, the worse it gets, and that fear, and you're confused. You don't know what's going on. You don't know why. You don't know what you can do about it. And there's no answer for it. What's that? That's confusion. Fear plus confusion equals panic. What happens when you panic physically? Well, you freeze, diaphragm freezes, struggle, distortion, tricks, and avoidance. That's what happens. And then what happens after that? Well, here comes the emotional bad habits of shame. You know, you're ashamed. Shame, guilt. You feel guilty. Self-hate. And then that old sense of isolation. Low self-esteem. And some others in there. Hopelessness. Feelings of hopelessness. Rejection.
But yeah, how can we change all this to the better?
Well, yeah, you first understand what it is that is, and so this whole dynamic, this fear-based learning has become, for want of a better term, phobia. It's a phobia. It's just an irrational fear. There's no reason why you can't do something that a little kid can do physically. Really, and you have to understand, where it comes from. Fear-based learning that doesn't go away. It's going to get stuck in your subconscious. It's going to get triggered by some stimuli, and so therefore, when you really get this and you feel totally confident that all of a sudden, here it comes again. Here comes that old fear. And then it turns to panic. Why? Because you're confused. And you think, well, gee, I've been so strong. I've been 100% confident. 0%, I've been doing all these things. And what? Here it is again. So, but if you understand what happens when it does go wrong, what happened? Well, your old phobia got triggered. Okay, it turned to panic, and that's what happens. Okay. And then not only that, you have to understand what you need to do about it, what you can do about it. Not only that, you have to understand, if you do these things, why, if I do these things, is it going to work? So if you understand all that, then you're much less likely for that fear of that old phobia. That's, I know I got it. I haven't felt it in over 6 years. There's people who haven't felt it in over 10, 15 years, but it's there. And some life circumstances might happen and might trigger it. And I might have to go back to basics and be a beginner again and fight to get it back. And like I had to do in 2001, I lost it big time because of personal situations, 2 parents who had Alzheimer's and a wife handing me divorce papers. Yeah, that did it. That was a stimuli that triggered my phobia, and I didn't handle it well. Okay, so the psychological part of it on the second day. Third day, most people have gotten it. and they're flying. So you're learning. There's somebody by the name of John Harrison who was also a great contributor to the program. And he came up with a bunch of exercises for public speaking, the finer points of public speaking. It's called the Harrison Workshops. And that's what you do Saturday morning. And then in the afternoon, prior to this on Friday, you went out with some veterans and they made contact. Now, contacts are the first contact with a stranger. That's the closest we can come to real life that's going to trigger the phobia. So they go out with new students and
I want to highlight it. It's veterans within the program.
Yeah, veterans within the program.
Not like war veterans.
Yeah, veterans. Well, and we do call this a war. At first, it is a war. We call it a war because it requires...
war of stammering.
Yeah, the war. And a lot of people don't like that term, but it's true. And you really have to make this your number one priority. It's beatable. And that's the other psychological thing. This affliction is beatable. Maybe you're not going to kill that phobia, but you can make it so weak that it's inconsequential. And when it does pop in, you can deal with it relatively easily. And therefore, yeah, that's the only part of stuttering that's not curable, is that fear-based, punishment-based learned phobia, fear. But then they watched the veterans talking to 100 strangers. And part of the psychological, the psychological mental habit that you come into the program with is trying to pretend you're a normal fluent speaker, trying to lie that you're normal. But your new mental habit that we try to instill is honesty. Honesty about who you are and what you're doing. You're not just a stutterer, accepting yourself as a stutterer. You're a stutterer who's trying to overcome stuttering, or fighting, in fact, and working very, very hard to overcome it. And that's who you are. And you're going to show other people. You're going to practice all these physical techniques in front of people with the mentality, I'm going to show you who I am and what I'm doing. I'm going to be honest, totally honest with you. Okay? And guess what happens? Then the fear has no place to go. See, a lot of times that's what they're panicking over, is that, God, someone's going to find out that I have a problem, that I can't do what a little kid can do. And so that's a very important part about the Friday. And anyways, you got to take it to the real world of strangers, because that first 5 seconds with a stranger is, you don't know how they're going to react. And so you got to do it, a lot of it. You got a lot of evidence also that you can't do it. And you got to give yourself a whole bunch of hard proof evidence that you can do it. And use these techniques. You can beat this thing. It's beatable. And so they're watching the veterans do it on the Friday afternoon. And then Saturday, you're working on the finer points of public speaking, and then you go out on the street yourself and you get minimum 100 contacts. It takes that many. It starts from 100 and goes up from there a day, because you're just giving yourself that proof, that hard evidence proof. And the other psychological thing, you've got to accept yourself as a beginner. You've had to learn to speak all over again. This is the most important thing you'll ever do in your life, and probably the most difficult thing. It requires your intense time and effort. And people have to understand that this is wonderful. You generally become a better than normal speaker. But this requires some intense work, time and effort, courage. You have to be courageous. Where does the courage come in? Well, you have to be courageous to be honest about who you are and what you're doing. You're not just accepting your stutter, the free struggle, distort, tricks, and avoidance. No, you're doing something about it. You're accepting yourself as somebody who's trying to overcome this affliction. And you can. And then, then what's the most scary thing anybody can do, even fluent speakers, is to stand up in a town square and give a speech. And that's what you do. That's what you do. And everybody finds out they can do it, and not only do it, they can do it well. And they start getting that feeling of what speaking is all about. Good speaking. So, and then they realize, hey, we give a lifetime membership. Why? Because this phobia we got is stubborn. It's going to attack you. You're on this high. You think you got it beat. You think you're invincible. And you find out you get attacked by the phobia, and then because you're confused, because you're still a beginner, that things fall apart. And that's where the support system comes in. You call your coach, you come back to a course, you go to a support group. We have a lot of support groups going on, online and in person. And you keep fighting, you keep doing it. You do it, and that's the big thing. Time and effort. It takes time and effort to succeed at anything. Intense time and effort. You got to be courageous. We say you have to be a beginner for 30 days. You got we call it deliberate disfluency. You're showing somebody who you are and what you're doing. A lot of doing that for 30 days. No more than 5 words per breath.
Maybe you can describe to the listeners who are not familiar with deliberate disfluency.
Yeah, deliberate disfluency is similar to voluntary stuttering, but it's something else. Voluntary stuttering, you're just showing somebody you stutter. That's it. And maybe you should have used a different term, but that's the one we came up with, deliberate disfluency. And you're just practicing your weapon, showing other people. And I'll just demonstrate it. You're just practicing your weapons, showing everybody that you're working to overcome a stutter. And you're also using what's called a disclosure. You're telling them who you are and what you're doing. I'm somebody. I'm working to overcome a stutter. I have to focus on things like my breathing and pronunciation. Most fluent speakers have no idea what we're going through as stutters, or the whole concept of stuttering. No idea, no clue. But they can understand that. And you do that for 30 days. Why? It's going to take that long to make your new mental, physical, thereby emotional habits. And we need to talk about emotions too. It's part of the psychological. That changes. You have to make these stronger than your old bad mental, physical, and emotional habits. And that just takes a lot of repetition. Time and effort, also known as work. You have to work at this, and you have to be courageous. That's why we use the war analogy. This is what a combat soldier goes through. You're facing a terrible fear that has made you that's basically ruined your life. For most of us, okay, there's some people who stutter and they manage to have a decent life. Most of us, no.
I've heard about an opera singer influencing the program. Can you share that story?
Well, yeah, that was what I talked about, the old opera singer in Amsterdam. And I found myself, a friend found that and read me the article, and I didn't think it would work. I'd tried so many other things. Nothing works. I felt hopeless. I'll be a stutterer for the rest of my life. And I was told by a brutal old but very honest friend that I was a painful ordeal to listen to before. I'd called him up when I got this. He couldn't believe it was me. He said, "Dave, is that really you?" I was talking pretty much like this. And he said, I explained, he says, Well, I guess I can tell you this now, Dave, but I couldn't back then. Like, you were painful. You were painful to listen to. It was an ordeal for us to listen to you. And but yeah, it was this old opera singer. He had, I'd talked about this before, just would had a little program for teaching stutters to just speak with the same part of the diaphragm opera singers use, called the costal diaphragm. And that, from what I saw and my experience, it was short term, but it was powerful. It was powerful. And then I combined that with what I had learned from Dr. Sheehan about the psychological part of it. And then, very much like, the invention of the mass-produced Model T, right, by Ford. See, the internal combustion engine had been around for a little while. It had been around, and then tires, pneumatic tires made of rubber had been around. And transmission from the old steam engines, they had transmissions and things like that, and chassis, all this other stuff. But he refined it, and especially what he did, I guess the analogy of our support system, where we have like 300 coaches and instructors around the world on a big old phone list that you could call anytime, day or night. Well, he incorporated the assembly line to mass produce these automobiles for the common man in America. And it's sort of similar. I mean, nothing was new really, but the way he combined everything was new. And that's what the McGuire program is. And I think, again, we have the best mental approach, the best physical approach, and the best support.
In what ways does the McGuire program stand out from other speech therapies?
Mostly it's our support system and our infrastructure. This is a program owned and run by those who have stuttered out of control. They've found a way out of it by other stutterers. See, one of the things that is missing, I guess, in the speech therapy profession, and you see the same thing with the treatment of alcoholics and drug addicts. You had to have been one and found your way out of it in order to get through to another alcoholic or drug addict. It's the same thing. Stuttering is so complex. It's so impactful, and it's so devastating. And that if you haven't been through that, you don't resonate. You don't resonate with whoever you're trying to help. Now, we all resonate with each other. We've been through it. We've found our way. You're an example of this. We found our way out of it. We've gone from being, for a lot of us, painful ordeals to listen to. And that's the truth. People don't want to look at the truth. And painful ordeals to listen to and to watch. To being rather articulate and eloquent, being very good speakers. That's a huge, profound change. So that, and the intensity, what speech therapist calls this a war, or what, this is a war. Because why? You're dealing with that same, not just fear, but panic that a combat soldier has to deal with. It requires courage. You have to develop your courage. So that's different from it. And the combination of and just developed by common sense, right? I have degrees and experience in psychology, but I'm not a speech therapist. I'm not I wouldn't call myself, we don't call ourselves speech therapists or professionals. No, this is a self-help program that we're teaching what worked for us. And it happens to be the same combination of stuff, and it works. And also being an example, you have example after. See, one thing about stuttering, you become very skeptical. It's part of being hopeless, right? A hopelessness that I can never beat this thing. It'll always beat me up. But you look around, you come to a course, even an online course, and all these people who are speaking so well. And then you see their first videos, which are available. And there's a lot who are very severe, and now they're rather pleasant to listen to.
Yeah, talking about that. So how do you measure success within the program?
Yeah, that's another thing that we evaluate ourselves every year. Now, this is internal, right? But it involves so many people. It involves, for example, we're in the process of evaluating our success rate for 2022. And what the coaches who are assigned to everybody coming in the program submit a report to the regional director, who compiles them and sends it to me. I go over them, and then we have a check and balance thing too with these evaluations. I turn these over to they're called evaluation auditors, and they will mostly the successes, when we rate on a scale from A plus to I guess C minus. Yeah, I was trying to remember here. Sorry, from A plus to C minus, and then and the B pluses, A minus, A plus are considered successful. Now, our evaluation auditors will call them and compare their notes to the primary coach's notes. And a lot of times the evaluation auditors say, no, this person is still he's still using tricks. He's avoiding, wasn't even trying to use the technique. No, he's not a B plus. He's more like a C plus. Or something like that. No, and so we're very honest about how we're doing, and right now average, and we've been doing this in the current system since 2004. These yearly evaluations, quite involving all primary coaches, regional directors, and I have 5 evaluation auditors who verify these reports. And we're strict with ourselves, and we show that we have a 75% success rate, which means 25% don't succeed. Generally, and I'll say this honestly, they don't succeed because they're unwilling to put in the necessary time and effort, the intense time and effort that's required. And there's a lot of people that want the magic pill, the pink pill. And no. It responds to hard work and courage and perseverance. And you look at being a success at anything, that's pretty much the requirements, hard work, time and effort, courage, perseverance. To be successful at anything, this is no different. But it's doable. It's beatable. Stuttering is beatable. I'm an example of that. Remember, I was described as a painful ordeal to listen to before.
Do you have some other examples from the program where you have seen a guy struggling so hard, and then after a year maybe?
Well, your own Danish regional director, Daniel Kusk. Wow, his first day video is available on YouTube. Just plug in his name, Daniel Kusk Stuttering, and you'll see. I wasn't quite that bad. I was pretty bad, but not that bad. Or I say good. Boy, that was, just taking it seemed like 5 minutes to get out one sound of one word. Wow, that's struggle, exhausting. Right? We have Yeah, he's a great example. Now Daniel, he says, since he got this, he can't stop smiling. He's just a wonderful person, but very successful in the real world. He's a civil engineer. He's raising a family. He's a cancer survivor. And through all this, he's been able to keep his speech, his very articulate, eloquent speech. So that's one of the best examples is right here in Denmark and Sweden and Scandinavia, our Scandinavian region.
So what feedback have you received from participants? How do I say it?
Participants.
Yeah, participants after completing a McGuire course.
Oh, you changed my life. I don't hold a lot of, I take everything with a grain of salt because they still have to prove it. They still have work to do. This isn't just one bang, you're cured. You'll never have to know. You have to, this can be a long war. First, you got to stay a beginner for 30 days. This is a war. Number one priority for 30 days. After 30 days, it becomes a sport. And they're generally emotional and they feel a huge weight lifted from them. I mean, after all, it is quite remarkable. I mean, it's like being in a wheelchair all your life. And then all of a sudden you do something, you go have some kind of treatment. And then you're not only walking, you're dancing, you're playing tennis, you're running. That's pretty much what it's like. It is mind-boggling sometimes. It's overwhelming. There's a profound personal change because guess what? What you say, how you say it, that's most of your personality. And what kind of personality have you had? What kind of personality was I having when I was a painful ordeal to listen to? What's my personality now? You feel like a totally different person. Is the feedback I get. However, some people go back to the way they were. They don't want to put in that time and effort. And it does require time, effort, courage, perseverance.
Leading to the last questions before going to the standard questions. What is your vision for the future of the McGuire Programme?
Well, we've evolved naturally. We've shrunk and we've expanded naturally as people come forward saying, hey, I want to bring this to my country, and they become regional directors. Some work out, some don't. But the people we have right now, the regional directors in these, I think 10 countries or something, are really good, the ones we have right now. And so we're going to pretty much stick with these, and maybe just when a new country comes up to let them have it. And through COVID, we had to really, really scramble because we have face-to-face courses, people breathing in each other's faces and can't have masks on, right? So we had to go to Zoom, to the internet. And I'll be darned, we have very good IT people in the program. So we did it. And during COVID, most of our courses were, except in Scandinavia, you guys didn't shut down, and you had in-person courses through the whole COVID thing, which is great. It says something too. It says something of how COVID was handled, especially in the States. But yeah, that now we found that the online courses are just as effective, and we'll know more from the evaluation reports, audits from 2022. But what we're seeing there, in fact, I think the online courses are even more effective.
But it's online course, but live online.
On Zoom, live on Zoom, yeah.
So it's
live.
not like on demand. People have to show up.
Yeah, they have to show up. It's like a course. They have to show up. And that I can see that we run hybrid courses. Part of it online, part of it in person is what a lot of regions are doing too. And I hope to just, my vision, we have very good, 300 very good coaches all around the world, very good instructors. And my dream was to, I'm getting kind of old now, I'm 76, and I'm not going to be around for I'll come to the point where I can't do this anymore, but I have no doubt that the people who are running it now and the people we get in that come in and go through our staff training program will keep it going for many, many years to come after I'm gone. So I have no worry about that. It's all set up. And I'm just hoping that it'll get bigger, more and more. My goal is to help as many stutterers as possible, as fast. It's the only thing that can make sense out of those terrible years that I had in my childhood, my young teenagehood, my young adulthood. I was 45 years old when I got this. And yeah, that's my goal. And whatever we can do to make that happen, we're going to do it. But it's also evolved naturally. It's organically, kind of like a tree.
Sounds great, everything. If people listening to the podcast want to learn more, where can they do that?
Just go to the website. And it's a pretty good website.
It's McGuireprogramme.com.
McGuireprogramme.com. And we're on television a lot, and there's a lot of media stuff that find it really shows you. I described what happens, but you got these documentaries of what goes on that really shows you, and the before and afters too. A lot of before and afters.
Cool. Okay, so we'll jump to the standard questions. What has your stutter taught you?
My stutter has taught me. Well, gosh, that's a tough question. It wasn't what my stutter taught me. The only thing it got me to do was maybe overachieve in certain areas, but I probably would have done that anyway, simply because my mom and dad were special people. But and by the way, it devastated them, my stutter. When I got this, when I started speaking like this, their whole lives changed too. They were just so relieved. But what is stuttering? It hasn't been so much what stuttering has taught me. Stuttering damaged me badly. And I've been trying to repair the damage, and I'm doing a pretty good job of it. I've had some therapy, and the best therapy, by the way, I think is cognitive behavioral therapy. I feel it's the most practical, most useful to repair the damage. But I guess it's the overcoming it that has really taught me a lot about life. It's like sports that really taught me a lot about life. It's too bad. And again, we call it the sport of speaking, even though it starts out as a war, because you need that same sports mentality that competitive athletes have.
What is your best advice for others who stutter?
Geez, come into our program. I've been through a lot of therapists and things, but and of course I'm going to say this, but I think I think we're the best. We have the best approach, and no one can match our support system. I think we have the very best in terms of the mental weapons, the physical weapons against this. And we do call it an enemy. It hasn't been our friend. We don't want to stutter. We want to be good speakers. There's nothing good about stuttering. I know there's people out there who don't want to hear that, but it's true to us anyways, for us who have overcome it. So anyways, your question was what do you say? Yeah, I'd say come into the McGuire Program. Do whatever you can. Go to the website. Get in contact with the regional director closest to you. And there's courses all over the world, and do your best. Do your best. Be prepared to work very hard. If you're prepared to work very, very hard and be courageous and persevere, you can do this. This is beatable. This is a pretty unique affliction that can be so devastating. And so that is really beatable. Maybe not curable because of the phobia I talked about, fear-based, punishment-based learned phobia. But you can make it so weak, it's inconsequential. And you deal with it when it pops up its ugly head.
How should individuals without a stutter engage with people who stutters?
Yeah, that's a tough one. If they're real severe, the common thing is don't say their words for them. Well, let me see. When I was taking minutes to get out one sound to one word, I would have appreciated some help. And that's true. You talk to anybody, the matter of severity. If it wasn't so severe, okay, just let me, if I'm communicating sort of well, then okay, just let me go. Don't say my words. But if I'm really struggling, someone's really struggling, yeah, see if you can help them out. But I tell you, it's hard. It's really hard. Like my friend said, Dave, I can tell you this now, but boy, it's painful to listen to you. Jeez, so if you're a fluent speaker listening to this, say, I know of a program, you can do better. You can beat this thing. But get yourself into this program, whatever it takes, and do it. And do what they say. And do your best. Work hard, be courageous, persevere. And you can do it. You can become a great speaker. That's what I'd say to anybody who's listening to this right now is, I'm sorry, I don't think there's any other real answer out there. I'm sure some speech therapists are successful with some people, and other programs have their success. But I happen to really believe in ours, and I know that we're successful. Maybe not for everybody, but it's a matter of some people are just 25% are not willing to put in the time and effort.
Can you recommend a person or a topic for the podcast?
Person or topic for the podcast?
A person we should interview next, or a topic we could discuss here?
Well, yeah.
In a future episode?
Yeah, for people in the program, I'd say, yeah, from people in the program, I think Matthew Richardson from the UK. I think he's really good. He's probably one of our oldest students, but boy,
So that would be a special in English.
Yeah, that would be
like
English,
this one,
yeah.
Because normally on the podcast we are Danish.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But Matthew, what is
Richardson? He's a staff trainer in the UK.
Okay,
he's on the phone list. Is what, and they're just a lot of people from the program who would be good, but most in English here, Daniel Kusk, you've already interviewed him. I think he's great. He has a great story.
Yes.
And a great first aid video too. Just a lot of people. I just mentioned a few. Joe O'Donnell from Ireland, the regional director of Ireland. Matt
cool.
Wilton. Yeah.
There's a lot of people to
a lot
reach
of
out
people.
To.
A lot of people who would really love to do that, and they would do it well, very well.
Do you have anything to share before we say goodbye for this episode?
Well, no, I said pretty much everything. And number one is this is beatable. You can become a good speaker. It's not easy. It requires work and courage and perseverance, like you heard me say over and over again. If you're willing to do that, and if you want to be a success in anything, that's what you're going to have to do. And that, take a look at what, if you're an out of control stutter listening to this, don't be careful of denial of what it's doing to you and what it's doing to other people too, especially those who care about you, love you, and they see you struggling. And so you can do something about it. You can. It's the most important thing you'll ever do in your life, because why? It's your personality. First impression you make on people, connection to the human race, frankly. And if you can hear that and accept that, it's hard to look at that. Now, and there's other things too, like what makes it difficult to really face this thing is little kids can do it. And me, with my education, my degrees, my accomplishments in sports and music, all this other stuff, I couldn't do what a little kid could do. And that's hard to look at. All this stuff is really hard to look at. Look at it. Really look honestly at what it's doing to you and also what it's doing to other people. And then do something about it. When you do commit to it, do it, because it's doable.
Okay,
that's
Dave.
it.
Okay, Dave, that was the questions. Thank you for being a part of Stammeklubben podcast.
Okay, it's my pleasure. Thank you. I enjoyed this, by the way.
Det var så afsnittet med Dave. Det var et rigtig godt interview, du havde fået strikket sammen, Christian.
Vi har samarbejdet om spørgsmålene.
Det er rigtigt, men det var dig, der stod for udførelsen.
Præcis, og jeg håber, at man derude som lytter kunne forstå mit skoleengelsk.
Det vil sige, det kunne man sagtens. Var det egentlig en udfordring i situationen at skulle holde samtalen på engelsk og stille spørgsmålene?
Jeg vil nok lyve, hvis jeg sagde nej. Ikke? Fordi det er selvfølgelig lidt sværere, men jeg synes jo, når man havde nogle nedskrevet spørgsmål eller noget, så kunne man holde sig til det, og ja, så må man jo bare tage det, som det er. Så jeg synes, det var helt fint.
Det var i hvert fald en fornøjelse at høre på.
Det er godt at høre.
Så vil vi også gerne takke denne episode sponsor, McGuire Programme, der er for alle personer over 14 år, der gerne vil arbejde med deres stamme og har et ønske om at blive veltalende. Hvis det lyder som noget for dig, så gå ind på McGuireProgramme.dk og læs mere.
Og med det sagt, så skal vi også huske at sige, at hvis du derude kender nogen, som er stammer, så send dem gerne en link til Stammeklubben, så der er flere, der kan høre den, og den kan blive spredt ud, og vi kan få nogle flere lyttere. Det vil vi sgu gerne.
Det vil vi gerne. Og husk at give 5 stjerner på den platform, du lytter til podcasten på. Og så vil vi også rigtig gerne opfordre til, at hvis du har et eller andet spørgsmål omkring stammen, der nærer dig, eller har et forslag til et tema eller en person, vi kan tale med, så skriv os endelig til os. Det vil vi rigtig gerne høre.
Og med det sagt, skal vi så ikke lukke den af her?
Yes. Tak for den gang. Vi lyttes ved.
Moin.